All right, I need to build another crosscut sled for my students to use for an upcoming project. So I'm using some 3D printed runners and just cutting in the kerf into part of the sled. And then the next part's the tricky part. I need to basically set the back fence to be 90 degrees to the blade. So I 3D printed this alignment jig that just snaps into the kerf. And then on my back fence, I have some 90-degree brackets that are gonna help me kind of hold it in place. So I snap that into the kerf and then can attach that with screws to the existing fence to hold it in place. Now that allows me to screw in the 90-degree bracket so I don't have to try to clamp it and flip it over. And so once I've got it secured, I can take the jig off and then check my fit. And so I'm gonna do a 2-cut method first just to see if there's any gaps. So I cut one and then another and then flip one of them around to basically see if I have any visible gap. If I do, I need to reset it again, but at this point I have no visible gap between those. So that's great, meaning that those are square. So now I'm going to go to my 5-cut method. So I'm going to go through the 5 cuts, and then at the end I'll have to measure what my actual error is, and I'm going to go at 12 inches. This is a relatively small sled, so I'm not that worried about it being beyond that. So I'm going to go take my measurements. This is going back to my 2-cut, and you can see as it's lined up there is no visible gap there, and so that means that I'm pretty close to being square right off the bat. I take my measurements, mark both the ends of the offcut and then the overall length, and then do my division to figure out what my actual error is. All right, I know people have feelings about this, but my maximum allowable error is going to be a 32nd of an inch at my 12 inches. And you can see that I'm only off by less than a 32nd of an inch, or about half a millimeter at my 12 inches. That's really, really, really small. So that's what I need, and that's fine. And if you just look at it, this piece looks square the way we'd actually check it to be square. There's no visible gap with using my square, and so I'm gonna call that good, right? That would be a square cut. But let's say that we really were trying to dial it in further than that, and we wanted to try to adjust this. So if we use an online calculator for the 5-cut method, what we find, given my dimensions, is we need to adjust it by about a 1/28th of an inch. So that is incredibly, incredibly small. And so this is where it gets really hard and where people get frustrated. I'm going to go back to the fence and I'm going to set my feeler gauge to be 1/28th of an inch away. I'm going to use one of the brackets that I had from the back to basically set that so that I can move it through and then do all my cuts again. So my 2-method cut and then my 5-method cut. And then I'm going to go back and see what happens. So if I do my measurements, and what we're going to see here is in trying to actually adjust this, I'm going to make it worse. So I think this is where people get really frustrated. I'm trying to dial this thing in even further, which is already good, right? Less than about a half a millimeter at 12 inches, less than a 32nd. But let me just take it off and set it again with the jig. So I'm going to just basically set it again just to see how quickly and easily this can be aligned using the jig. I'm going to go through my 5-cut method and then see what we're going to do. So I'm going to do this multiple times. I did 4 setups actually. The second one was the one where I just used I tried to manually adjust it. And as you see here, I've actually dialed this in really, really well. So you can see my average error at 12 inches is less than a 64th, and is only about 0.3 millimeters at 12 inches. This is a cheap solution. It helps you with the hardest part of your crosscut sleds, and if you're interested, check it out at shopclasssolutions.com.